3 squad cars came tearing down my dirt driveway like I'd just fired a warning shot at Congress. And what was I doing? Sitting on my front porch with a cold glass of iced tea and a quiet Sunday afternoon. I didn't wave a weapon. I didn't shout a word. But apparently, sipping sweet tea in peace now qualifies as a domestic threat, at least according to a woman named Priscilla Monroe. She was standing at the end of my property line, flapping her arms and yelling to the officers that I was unstable, armed, and an existential threat to family life. That's what she called me, an existential threat. I'm a retired Marine who spends more time pruning pecan trees than talking to people, but it turns out when a clipboard queen with no real job decides your freedom makes her uncomfortable, you better brace for the suburbs to call in backup. Ever had a neighbor try to control your entire existence with a clipboard and too much free time? Drop a comment, especially if you've survived a neighborhood tyrant with too much laminate and not enough sanity. I'd lived on Dry Canyon Ranch for 5 years. 20 acres of clean air, mesquite trees, and no one to tell me what color my trash bins had to be. After the military, I wanted quiet. So I started doing remote tech consulting and built my little dream setup. A small house, a good barn, and a home-built shooting range about 200 yards out with a professional backstop and every legal permit signed, sealed, and filed. I'd shoot once or twice a week, nothing crazy. Just me, a couple of rifles, and enough ear protection to remind myself I wasn't in a war zone anymore. It was therapy, really. But when the Redwood Hollow development sprung up like a row of plastic teeth next to my property line, trouble moved in with the stucco. And trouble's name was Priscilla. The moment she moved into house number 17 with matching shutters and a husband named Kyle who blinked like he was held hostage, she came knocking with a casserole and a concern. Now look, I tried the polite route. She brought banana bread. I smiled. She said the gunfire was alarming for the children. I showed her my permits, explained the range's design, and invited her to inspect the safety features herself. She declined, but made a mental note of every detail. That's when the strange things started. I'd walk out to shoot, and there she was. At her upstairs window, phone out, recording. She called the sheriff's department 4 times that month. Each time the officers came, shook my hand, checked the range, and left satisfied, but that wasn't enough for her. Priscilla didn't want confirmation I was legal. She wanted control. And when she couldn't control me with banana bread or bureaucracy, she started building a case out of thin air and paranoia. So on this fine Sunday, I wasn't surprised to see flashing lights again. But this time, she'd gone full Broadway. She claimed I was aiming rifles at homes, threatening neighbors, and creating a volatile atmosphere. Her words, not mine. I just sat on my porch and watched the drama unfold, every sip of tea timed like punctuation. The lead officer, a seasoned guy named Sergeant Devers, approached with calm professionalism. "Sir, we received some serious complaints today," he said. "Mind if we take a look?" I stood up, nodded, and handed over a folder with every document a reasonable adult could want: permits, range specs, and a notarized letter from the county safety inspector. While the officers walked out to assess the range, Priscilla's volume increased in inverse proportion to her credibility. 20 minutes later, Sergeant Devers returned. "Mr. Keller, everything looks in order. Thanks for your time." He turned to Priscilla, who had steam coming out of her ears like an overboiled kettle. "Ma'am, there's no violation here. The range is safe, legal, and Mr. Keller has every right to use his land within these parameters." She didn't take it well. She started on about noise complaints, children's safety, property values, and cultural shifts. I wasn't sure what that last one meant, but she tossed it in like paprika on a deviled egg, just for color. I watched her pivot from legal jargon to moral panic in real time. As the cruisers backed out and the dust settled, she turned her head sharply toward me and gave a look I'd seen before. Not from a neighbor, but from someone plotting something bigger, something sneakier. I knew that look from my time overseas. And I knew this wasn't over. It was just the opening salvo in what would become the most absurd, calculated, and strangely satisfying war I'd ever fight without camouflage. She wore a navy pantsuit, a fake pin, and a smirk that had foreclosed on logic. Priscilla Monroe didn't just act like she was in charge, she acted like the county owed her a crown and a gavel. A week after the great iced tea standoff, the first flyer showed up in every mailbox within walking distance of her manicured McMansion. It was printed in grayscale, because of course it was, with a blurry photo of me walking across my own land, the words, "Potential threat, armed, aggressive," written in a font that looked like it came free with Windows 98. I didn't know whether to laugh or call my attorney. My face was now community enemy number one thanks to a woman whose authority had all the legal weight of a kindergartner's lemonade stand. And just like that, I went from vet to villain with a single trip through her inkjet. Now, I'd seen a lot in the military. Election rigging in failed states, propaganda in war zones, but I never expected to face a personal smear campaign funded by printer paper and petty rage. What started as a neighbor's tantrum had evolved into a full-blown misinformation offensive. Some neighbors ignored it. Some didn't. Whispers started. A few folks who used to wave now averted their eyes. Megan got asked at the gas station if we had security issues at the ranch. Megan got asked at the gas station if we had security issues at the ranch. One lady at the farmer's market said she was praying for us. Priscilla wasn't trying to stop my shooting range. She was trying to erode our character, piece by piece, like a drip in a sink that eventually cracks the porcelain. And just like that, my real battle wasn't with bullets. It was with perception. I figured maybe if I laid low, the nonsense would fade out like a bad trend. But Priscilla didn't believe in losing steam. She believed in doubling down. Week 2 brought version 2 of the flyer. New headline, worse grammar, and a bullet point list of concerns, ranging from excessive outdoor gear to antisocial behavior. According to her, I intimidated families by owning tools. I suppose a power drill is a weapon of mass disruption now. She'd even pulled screenshots from one of my old military training videos and framed them like I'd filmed a manifesto. I half expected to be accused of threatening gnomes next, but it was working. Slowly, quietly. Her clip art war on truth was turning into something more dangerous. Isolation. And isolation makes good people second-guess their gut. That's when I decided to do what every good Marine and better husband does, fight back with facts. But not just facts, with truth dressed in calm, wrapped in digital clarity and uploaded straight to YouTube. I recorded a video, standing right there at my shooting range, permits in hand, addressing the lies one by one with the kind of voice you use when you're done being polite but not done being fair. It wasn't loud, I wasn't angry, I was precise. I'm Troy Keller. I'm a law-abiding American on my own land. I've served my country, I pay my taxes, and if someone's afraid of my iced tea, they need a different hobby. I uploaded it and walked away. I didn't expect much, but the internet did what the internet does when it smells injustice. In 3 days, the video had been shared across 3 counties. Gun rights groups reposted it. Veteran networks picked it up. People started tagging Priscilla Monroe in the comments like it was a town hall brawl. Queen Priscilla of Entry-OS-Stan became a trending nickname. Strangers sent me messages of support. And the best part, at her next emergency HOA meeting, the one she tried to frame as a community defense briefing, people got up and walked out. One man said, "Maybe we should just let the guy enjoy his land." That stung her worse than a lawsuit. But she wasn't done. I could see her pacing through the window that night, phone to her ear, arms flailing like a weather warning. I knew she'd be back with something worse, because Priscilla Monroe didn't know how to lose. But what she didn't know was, I didn't know how to stop, and the next thing I'd discover would take this HOA fantasy and unravel it thread by fake thread. Sometimes the most dangerous power isn't the kind with a badge or a budget. It's the kind that walks around with no authority but all the appearance of it. In this segment, we learn that when someone can't control you legally, they'll try to control your reputation. And if you don't push back with truth, their fiction becomes fact by default. But standing firm, quiet, steady, and documented isn't just resistance, leadership. especially when the whole neighborhood's watching, waiting to see if anyone will finally say that's enough. If you've ever had someone twist the truth just to feel powerful, you know the damage isn't always loud, it's subtle, slow, and suffocating. That's how reputations get rewritten and good people get pushed into corners. But here's the thing, silence is compliance, and facts don't defend themselves. So I spoke up, not with shouting, but with clarity. And if you've ever been targeted by someone playing sheriff without a badge, drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. Because the real punchline came next, when I looked into Priscilla's so-called authority and found out it didn't legally exist. No board, no charter, no votes. Just one woman playing HOA president in a fantasy league of her own. And that, my friends, is where things got fun. Stick around, because next, we go door to door with the truth and watch a fake empire start to crack. She posted lies. I posted facts, and 37,000 strangers agreed with me. Turns out, when you calmly speak truth into a camera while someone else screams into a void of their own making, the audience can tell the difference. My video didn't have dramatic music or slick editing. It had a porch, a coffee-stained permit folder, and one tired man explaining how the Second Amendment didn't come with a dress code or HOA approval. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just told the truth like it was a good story, because it was. Within 48 hours, the views exploded. Comments came in from people who dealt with their own mini-dictators, false fines, overgrown ecos, fake regulations. Suddenly, I wasn't just a rancher with a rifle. I was a relatable headline. I didn't plan to become a folk hero. But when people started calling me the freedom neighbor, I didn't correct them. Veterans messaged me. A retired judge said my range was better maintained than his local sheriff's training facility. A woman from Tennessee thanked me for not backing down to the Garden Gnome Gestapo. That one stuck. Even Megan, who usually rolls her eyes at the internet, started reading the comments aloud at dinner. "Looks like you're trending," she said one night, smiling over spaghetti. And just like that, the tide began to shift. For every flyer Priscilla sent, my inbox filled with support. She was handing out laminated panic. I was handing out evidence. Guess which one people trusted? Priscilla, of course, did not take it well. She called an emergency HOA meeting, which, by the way, still had no legal standing, and printed new flyers branding me as a known agitator. That's right, I went from quiet vet to known agitator in 2 weeks. The woman should have gone into fiction writing. The meeting was held in the Redwood Hollow clubhouse, with her standing at the podium like a budget TED Talk speaker, clicking through a PowerPoint packed with out-of-context screenshots and dramatized maps. But here's the part she didn't count on. The people were already watching my video, and halfway through her lecture, folks just started standing up and walking out, like someone pulled the fire alarm on her credibility. One older guy, George, I think, paused on the way out to say, "Maybe we should mind our own business and stop harassing our neighbors." You'd have thought he flipped a table. Priscilla turned red, sputtered something about community cohesion, and tried to rally the remaining attendees with more unverified threats, but it was too late. The curtain had lifted. People weren't just leaving the room. They were leaving her narrative. She'd built a paper empire, and now the ink was bleeding. You could feel the control slipping from her hands with every pair of shoes that walked out that door. And that was worth more than 100 flyers. I went back to my porch that evening, iced tea in hand, and watched the sunset, knowing something had shifted. Not just for me, but for every decent neighbor who ever got bullied by someone quoting rules that didn't exist. That video didn't just defend me, it gave people permission to question authority that never earned its title. But while I was enjoying a rare moment of calm, I knew something was still off. Priscilla didn't seem like the kind of person who let go, and something told me she'd built her house of lies on more than just gossip, so I opened my laptop and started digging. What I found next made her flyers look like origami. Because Priscilla Monroe's HOA didn't just lack power. Legally speaking, it never existed. and that was about to make everything a whole lot more interesting. Sometimes the most powerful form of defense isn't loud noise, it's quieter truth. In a world full of copy-paste outrage and laminated lies, a simple, honest voice can pierce through the nonsense like sunlight through fog. This part reminds us that courage doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it's just one person standing still while false power crumbles under its own weight. When the truth is public, pretenders lose their grip, and people finally start listening. When someone builds a lie loud enough, the only way to answer it is with the kind of truth that doesn't flinch. That video didn't just clear my name. It reminded a whole lot of people that you don't have to roll over when someone waves a fake title and a clipboard. If you've ever had to stand up to power that wasn't earned, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, because chances are someone out there needs to know they're not the only one. But the real lesson? Sometimes bullies don't just make up the rules, they make up the entire institution. And when I pulled back the curtain, I didn't just find bad leadership. I found a legal fantasy built on absolutely nothing. No votes, no bylaws, no legitimacy, and you better believe I was about to share that with the neighborhood. Door by door, lie by lie. What happens when you expose a queen who was never crowned? Stick around. The empire's about to fall. No bylaws, no filings, no legal standing. Just a blazer, a clipboard, and a fever dream. That's what I found when I dug into Priscilla Monroe's HOMA. Turns out she didn't just bend the rules. She'd handcrafted an entire imaginary government out of Canva templates and audacity. There were no records of any legal homeowner association ever being registered in the Redwood Hollow development. No elected board, no county charter, just Priscilla, her custom stationery, and a matching blazer with a logo she probably embroidered during a Law & Order binge. Her authority had the substance of cotton candy, fluffy, colorful, and gone the second you added heat. So I did what any decent citizen with a laminator and a temper would do. I printed every bit of evidence and posted it right on my front door like it was a Declaration of Independence. Bold letters, highlighted sections, citations from the county clerk's office, no commentary, just facts. Because when someone builds their power on illusion, nothing rattles them like documentation. And sure enough, it didn't take long. First came the dog walkers, then the joggers, then the golf cart crew. Folks who used to avoid eye contact were now slowing down to read every sheet I'd taped to the wood. Turns out, people love a scandal when it's printed in 12-point font and zip-tied to a porch. The stories started trickling in like rain through a leaky roof. One neighbor, Marge, said she'd been fined $500, 0 cents, for planting yellow daisies instead of HOA-approved whites. Another man told me Priscilla threatened legal action over a barbecue grill that was 2 inches over some property line. A retired couple said they were told their mailbox was off-brand. Not illegal, just unfashionable. That's the level of fiction we were dealing with. She'd been using phony citations and official-looking letterheads to scare decent folks into silence, and to fund whatever petty projects she deemed worthy. If HOA stood for harassment on arrival, she'd nailed it. But here's the thing about truth. It spreads faster than gossip when it's nailed to a front door. Within days, neighbors started asking questions. Some even brought over their own violation notices, looking for confirmation that the rules they'd followed were fake. One woman had been forced to replant her flower bed 3 times. She nearly cried when I told her none of it had any legal weight. That's when I realized something bigger was happening. It wasn't just my fight anymore. The whole street was waking up from the same HOA-induced fever dream. And nothing unites a community like the discovery that they've all been conned by the same clipboard. Still, deep down, I knew this wasn't Priscilla's final play, because when someone builds a kingdom out of fear, truth only takes away their walls. But fear? That's what they use to strike back. And right when the tide was turning, right when neighbors were finally stepping out of her shadow, she dropped something on my doorstep that didn't just challenge my patience, it shattered it. It wasn't just about fake rules anymore. It became personal, because all her flyers, her drama, her dress-up power games, none of it ever made me snap. But when she made my wife cry, She found my breaking point. And the war turned real. Authority isn't about blazers, logos, or loud voices. It's about truth, trust, and earned respect. This part reminds us that real power stands on facts, not fear. When one person exposes a lie, it's a risk. But when a whole community sees it, it becomes a reckoning. The moment we stop blindly obeying and start asking why, paper kingdoms start to crumble. And sometimes, all it takes to wake up a neighborhood is one person brave enough to post the truth on their front door. She didn't break any bones, she broke my wife with paper. That red flyer was thinner than a whisper, but somehow heavy enough to drop Megan to her knees. I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, holding it like it was radioactive. Her hands were shaking. "She left this," she said, voice flat like she was reading a funeral notice. And in a way, she was. It was a fake citation, complete with phony legalese and an HOA logo that looked like it was designed by a bored raccoon. But the words hit hard. Community aggression. Violator subject to civil penalty, $2,400, 0 cents. The accusation wasn't just against me this time. It named Megan directly, said she'd intimidated residents and displayed threatening posture while getting the mail. That was Priscilla's new weapon. Emotional terrorism by envelope. Now, Megan isn't fragile. She's a nurse, she's handled emergencies, bad news, even death. But this was different. This was targeted, personal, and humiliating. "What if she can actually do this?" she whispered. "What if we lose everything over some made-up rule?" That's when I saw the tears. Not from pain, not from fear, but from sheer exhaustion. It wasn't the $2,400, 0 cents that got her. It was the idea that some stranger in a navy pantsuit could just invent authority and hurt us with it. That red paper didn't just accuse her, it violated something far deeper. The quiet dignity of being left alone. I stood there in our kitchen, iced tea in my hand, and felt the glass tremble slightly. That was the moment the war got personal. I didn't knock, I didn't call. I marched straight across the property line like I was storming Normandy. Priscilla was out front, clipboard in hand like always, wearing her HOA pin like it came with a pension. "You can't threaten me," she shouted, before I said a word. "You're the threat to this community." I held up the paper with Megan's name on it, shaking it once like a flag of disgust. "You've crossed a line," I said, voice low and steady. "This isn't just annoying anymore, this is harassment." Her eyes narrowed, but her mouth kept flapping, accusing us of disturbing harmony, failing landscape ethics, and, my personal favorite, vibrational disharmony of neighborhood culture. Apparently, my grass offended the architectural rhythm of her soul. But here's the twist. This time, the neighbors saw everything. They came out slowly, one by one, drawn by the volume and the absurdity, and they watched as Priscilla, queen of the laminate kingdom, melted in public like a snowman on a skillet. Her voice cracked, her words slurred. She pointed and shouted and even accused me of waging psychological warfare with my porch posture. I didn't move. I didn't shout back. I just stood there, the same way she'd imagined me dangerous. Still, tall, unbothered. Irony? She accused us of aggression while screaming like a banshee on my lawn. And the people she once ruled with fake rules? They recorded it. Phones came out, eyebrows raised, and the power she'd borrowed from silence was gone. I walked back to my porch without a word, leaving her yelling into the wind. Megan met me at the door. I handed her the crumpled violation notice and whispered, "It's done." She cracked. But inside, I knew something else was cracking too. Priscilla's empire, sure, but also my patience for playing defense. Because poetic justice wasn't done yet. While she'd been fabricating rules and mailing out fantasies, I'd been digging, and what I found wasn't a lie. It was very real. She may have forged authority, but one thing she didn't fake was her tax debt. And the county was about to sell the land she pretended to rule. Real harm doesn't always come with sirens. It can arrive quietly, folded and stuffed in a mailbox. In this chapter, we see how fake power becomes real pain when good people stay silent. The lesson is simple. When someone weaponizes fear and paperwork, it's not just annoying, it's abuse. But there's also strength in standing firm, especially when dignity is on the line. Sometimes the line between irritation and injustice is crossed with a single tear from someone you love. And when that line breaks, so does the waiting. If you've ever watched someone you love get torn down by a lie wrapped in fake authority, you know the damage hits deeper than money ever could. Megan didn't cry because we couldn't pay a fine. She cried because someone thought they had the right to invent consequences and call it law. That's the lesson here. Silence lets bullies build castles on sand, but the moment you speak, their empire starts to sink. If you've faced this kind of abuse, safety rules, fake fines, fear tactics, drop your story in the comments. We don't fight lies with louder voices, we fight them with receipts. But this wasn't just about exposing her for who she wasn't. It was about finding what she'd been hiding. And what I found next wasn't printed on a flyer or dreamed up in a clubhouse meeting. It was in the county tax records. And it was very, very real. Because while Priscilla faked rules, one thing she couldn't fake was debt. And when the land under her kingdom hit the auction block, I was there with a plan. Stick around, the hammer's about to fall. She ruled the land for 2 years. Then I bought it. For $75,000, 0 cents. Turns out Priscilla Monroe's fake HOA kingdom had one Achilles heel. She never paid the property taxes on the common areas she claimed to control. While she was mailing out pretend fines and posing like the mayor of manicured grass, the county was quietly stacking up a bill she never saw coming. When I found out the land she used to terrorize half the neighborhood was up for auction, I did what any good Marine-turned-spreadsheet nerd would do. I liquidated some investments, pulled together the cash, and showed up with a cashier's check and a purpose. Not revenge, just resolution. The auction itself was poetic. There she was, decked out in her best Navy suit, fake HOA pin gleaming like it meant something, nervously flipping through a folder like paper could reverse math. She bid low. I bid higher. Her voice cracked. Her allies whispered. One by one, the real estate guys dropped out, and then, with a gavel strike that felt like divine punctuation, it was over. Sold to bidder number 7. That bidder was me. She stumbled backward, one heel catching in a crack in the pavement. Her shoe flew off and landed in a puddle like karma had been practicing its aim. A moment so symbolic it didn't need narration. But man, did it deserve a slow clap. Now owning the land meant owning the clubhouse, the park, and all the spaces she'd ruled with laminated tyranny. First order of business? Legally dissolve the HOA she'd been pretending to run. I filed it clean with the county, no drama, no shouting, just a paper trail stronger than her imaginary citations. Second order? I repurposed the land. That pristine common area, it became the Dry Canyon Freedom Range, fully legal, fully permitted, and fully satisfying. Where she once handed out fake violations, we now offered concealed carry classes and veterans marksmanship events. She built an HOA out of lies. I built a gun range out of truth. The neighbors? Most stayed. I offered them real leases at reasonable rates with options to buy their homes back after restitution funds were repaid. We even set up a compensation pool using profits from the range to help those who'd been scammed. Irony of the century, she feared gunfire, now it funded refunds. The very thing she tried to outlaw became the tool that restored the community. Even the sheriff's office signed on. We hosted training sessions, youth safety courses, and holiday shooting tournaments. The old clubhouse now echoed with the sound of ethics, not ego. The best part? No more flyers, just freedom. 6 months later, Priscilla came to the range. Not in power, not in defiance, just humbled. She asked to speak at the old clubhouse, now our training room, and to a room full of people she once manipulated. She finally apologized. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. I thought power would fix my failure, she said. I let pride turn into control. Some forgave her, some didn't. But she stood there and took it, and me? I stood on that porch, sipping my iced tea, listening to the echo of real justice, the kind that doesn't gloat, doesn't threaten, and doesn't laminate lies, just serves cold truth with a warm smile. That day, as I watched Priscilla walk out of the building she once pretended to rule, no clipboard, no followers, just silence, I felt something deeper than victory. I felt peace. Not the kind you get from winning an argument, the kind that comes when truth finally gets the last word. I didn't win by shouting louder. I won by standing firm, staying legal, and remembering that real power doesn't need a badge or a logo. It just needs the facts and the patience to let them shine. So if there's one thing I hope you take from this story, it's this. You don't need to scream to be strong. You don't need fake rules to get respect. And when someone tries to control you with lies, the best revenge isn't rage, it's receipts. This wasn't just about guns or grass height or some fake HOA. It was about the kind of quiet courage it takes to stand up and say, no, not today. I built a gun range, yes, but what we really built was something stronger, community, truth, and a reminder that paper bullies can't stand in the face of people who know their rights. If you've ever had to push back against fake authority, leave your story in the comments. You're not alone. Like this video if it reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, and hit that subscribe button because there are more stories coming. Stories about standing your ground, exposing the absurd, and proving that justice doesn't need a title, just a backbone. Until next time, keep your head high, your facts straight, and your clipboards where they belong, in the recycling bin. What story should I tell next? Was it the fake HOA, the clipboard tyrant, the gun range justice? Now it's your turn. Drop a comment and tell me what you'd like me to tackle next. Corrupt neighbors? Wild inheritance twists? HOA drama from your own life? The best suggestions might just become the next story on this channel. Let's build these tales together, one crazy, satisfying plot twist at a time.